Welcome to Satsang. This is that very, very special and very sacred time after our beautiful Ganga Arati ceremony, where we come together in what we call the presence of truth. The word Satsang literally means in the association of truth. But it's not that truth that says today is Saturday, or that truth that says it's the 27th of March, or a truth that says it's 7 o'clock in the evening. Because all of those truths are only temporarily true. Are only temporarily true. And they're not true for all. Right now, at this moment, it's 7 o'clock for us here in Rishikesh. But pick up the phone, call someone in LA or London or Israel or Sydney. Different times, different dates even. I think it's already the 28th in Australia, or very close. And it won't be true for us at this time tomorrow. So Satsang refers to that truth which is true for all and all the time. That truth that is the truth of who we are at the deepest core of our being. And so it's a time of questions and answers. And as we always say, there's no such thing as a wrong question or a silly question or a stupid question. As long as it's something that is coming between you and your truth. We all know on the corest, deepest level what our saints and sages and the rishis have taught us. That who we are is divine. Who we are is love, is truth, is consciousness, is infinity. But how many of us are able to actually live that? And so the truth that we speak about in Satsang is, what do we need to know, to realize, to experience, to be free of, such that we can actually live as who we are? That real truth of who we are. So with that, I know we have questions that have come in advance, and of course, if there are questions here, we are happy to take them.
Pranam, Pujya Sadhviji. So one of the first questions that has come in today is it true Ganga in goddess form is visualized by pure souls? Have you had any vision of her?
So, when we speak about the divine, whether we speak about Mother Ganga as the goddess, whether we speak about any form of the divine, any aspect of the divine, it's always a challenge because everybody's experience of the divine is different. Some people have very visual experiences. Some people have just very felt sense experiences. Some people have experiences in so many different ways. And yet, None of them is right, none of them is better or worse. And so when we talk about Mother Ganga being visible, when we speak about Mother Ganga being visible, sure, some people have beautiful, beautiful visions of Mother Ganga, see Mother Ganga visually. Others feel Mother Ganga. Yes, I have had very beautiful visual experiences of Mother Ganga. But here's what's important. Never think that because you have had a different type of spiritual experience, that it's worse or it's better, that it's more or it's less. Never ever think like that. Whatever experience you're having is exactly right. Whether it's visual, whether you're hearing it, whether you just feel it, whether it's with form, without form, with name, without name, whether it seems to be outside of you, whether it seems to be inside of you, whatever it is, it's exactly right. And so I try, it's a challenge because we really try to avoid. Talking about spiritual experiences is so beautiful, and it's so inspiring, and it's so uplifting to hear everyone who's had spiritual experiences share, this is what it's been like for me. And yet the dilemma is that then, of course, that makes people who have had different experiences wonder, well, maybe mine's not as good. Maybe I'm just not pure enough, or not worthy enough, or not good enough. And the most important piece is, whatever experience I've had, or someone else that you've read about or you've heard has had, is what's necessary for our particular karmic experience. And whatever experience you've had, or you're going to have, or you're having right now, is exactly what's right for you. So yes, I have had visions of Mother Ganga. But the truth is, that felt sense experience of feeling her inside with eyes closed, sitting on her banks meditating or being in the arati and feeling her, is no less powerful, no less exquisite, no less amazing, no less divine than seeing. Love is something we feel deep in our hearts. And whether it's a love for another human being, whether it's love for God, it's something we feel deep within us. To say that it has to be something visual would be to say that people who are blind somehow can't love as much as people who can see. Which, if you've ever known someone who's blind, of course isn't true. So, yes, visual experiences are sometimes there. Are they granted to those who are pure? I wouldn't say so. Because to me, what that would mean is that God somehow had a preference for the sense of sight over other senses. That somehow God was saying, to feel Ganga in your heart, to hear Ganga, to know Ganga, is somehow less than to see Ganga. And I don't think so. I don't think God has any particular preference for the sense of sight, or God wouldn't make people blind. If the sense of sight was the most important, powerful, spiritual sense that we had, then there would be no way of understanding a compassionate, loving God who made children born blind. So no, I don't necessarily think that you get visual experiences only if you're somehow pure or better. I think that it's just that each of us has different experiences at different times in different ways, teaching us different things. The main point is to have the experience, to have that awareness, to know that, and to feel that.
If anybody here has a question, feel free to raise your hand. But the second question that has come in is, I've been listening to a lot of satsang recently, and there's a reference to an I, a sense of, true self, without labels and conditioning. And while listening, I feel a sense of dissolution, a calmness, a stillness. But how do I stay with it through moving in this material world? And if the material world exists and dissolves into this, then how do we stay not identifying with the material world?
Beautiful. Okay, so the question is framed around this idea. It's framed around this idea of the truth of who we are, being labelless, being nameless, being expansive, not being this physical body, which we speak about so frequently. One of the core teachings is, you're not this physical body. You're not the name, you're not the role, you're not the identity. As the question said, I've been watching a lot of satsang videos, so it's something we speak about a lot. Most of us get so attached to the identity, to the name, to the form, to what I look like, to what my relations are, to what else I have to do today, what's on my to-do list. How much am I making? How much am I making compared to other people? How is my level of success? Financial success, career success, social success, relationship success compared to other people? We're constantly judging and looking just on the basis of this physical form. And so the teaching is, you're not the body. You're not the role. You're not the identity. You're infinite. You're infinite. When we chant Purnamida, Purnamidam, Purnat Purnamudachyate, Purnasya Purnamadaya, Purnameva Vashishyate. That, the capital T, that, the divine that, is whole and complete and perfect. And this, that has been created out of that, created by that, is also whole and complete and perfect. But then, of course, the question says, well, okay, so if we know that the truth of who we are is nameless, formless, it's love, it's truth, it's consciousness, how do we hold that all day? And how do we move through the world as that? So here's what's beautiful. There's there's different aspects of reality that are going on at the same time. Think about the way that the old TV sets used to go. Some of you are very young, but some of you have probably been alive long enough to see what TV sets used to look like before we had remote controls, where you actually had a dial. And you would just turn a knob. And you would go from channel 2 to channel 4 to channel 6, and the knob was stuck on the TV, and you had to actually get up and turn it, and then the channel would turn. Now, all of that was broadcasting simultaneously. It wasn't like the people at channel 2 suddenly started broadcasting because you turned the dial. You know, you're watching channel 4. Then you decide, oh, now I'm going to watch channel 2. You turn it. Suddenly all the guys at channel 2 are like, quick, 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 go live, you know, we're on. It was broadcasting anyway. While you were watching channel 4, channel 2 was on. But you just weren't tuned into it at that point. But it was still broadcasting. If anybody's ever woken up in the middle of the night and decided to turn on the TV at a time that you've never watched TV before, and suddenly it's like, oh, I wonder what's on at 2 o'clock in the morning. Well, again, the universe didn't somehow know that you're now awake and put together a program for you to watch at 2 in the morning. It was broadcasting anyway. You just weren't tuned in. Normally you're sleeping, now you're awake, you turn on the TV, and you see what's broadcasting. In the same way, in life, there's different channels, you can say, of ways to look at life, ways to experience life. One of them is what we call the highest truth, the deepest truth, which is who you are is consciousness. Who you love is porn. That capital T, that divine that we've been created, not just by, but of. That all of that infinite nature, all of that infinite consciousness, infinite love, infinite truth of the divine is also us. That's one channel of existence. And another channel of existence is here I am in this body. You know, when we speak about illusion, people somehow misunderstand it to mean that this is somehow just like a mirage. It's an optical illusion, as though somehow I had something in my eye and it made me think that I had a body. Like if you're driving, you know, in the desert and you see what looks like water up ahead, but it's actually not. Or like those optical illusions that a lot of us did as kids, where there's a picture and you have to see, you know, do you see the two people with a profile, or do you see the vase in the middle? It's not a matter of an optical illusion. It's a matter of it's not the highest truth. It's like saying the wave and the ocean. So the wave is not the highest truth. The highest truth of a wave is ocean. Because even in the height of its waveness, even if it's a 30-foot tsunami, at the core, it's ocean. At any point in its wave life, in its waveness, its highest truth is ocean. Whether it's a 1-inch wave or a 30-foot tsunami, at the core, it's ocean. However, anybody who's ever surfed, anybody who's ever swum in the ocean, anybody who's ever experienced a tsunami knows that also exists. That wave, although not the highest truth, will drown you, could give you a good ride if you happen to know how to surf and it works out well for you. takes you up, takes you down, but it could crush you, it could drown you, destroys buildings. The tsunami in 2004 in South India, where we did a lot of work, it wiped out 500 meters from the coastline, everything in its sight, every house, every shop, every building. Well, that wasn't an illusion, that happened. And in the midst of its tsunami-ness, it was ocean. And that's really the same way of thinking about yourself here. So I am this body. In that particular channel, I've got this body. And I've got to feed it properly. I've got to exercise it properly. I've got to give it enough sleep. It's got its own certain things that it does really well, things that it doesn't do so well. It's got some strengths. It's got some weaknesses. If we took the rest of the evening and we went around, I'm sure we'd hear everything about somebody's going to have diabetes, somebody's going to have cholesterol, somebody's going to have a bad back, somebody's going to have a bad knee, somebody's going to have sinus infections. So we've all got little aspects that we know we have to take care of. Well, those are not illusions. And yet, despite any of that, despite the ailments, the fragileness, despite the exquisiteness, the glory of this body. Because again, if we went around, we could talk about what every one of us has done with this body in our lives. What we still can do. We've got a bunch of yogis here. I'm sure we could have a beautiful show of what physical bodies can do in this moment. I bet we've got some dancers here who could show us dance. I bet we've got all kinds of things that we could see be done by the physical body. We've all got certain weights and heights, skin tones, pints of blood in our body. That's not an illusion. It exists, and it's not the highest truth of who you are. Because that physical body keeps changing. Its size, its shape, its composition, what it can do very well, what it can't do very well, what its ailments are, how old it is, that keeps changing. But I doesn't change. That I that has been there, not just this life, but through all of your lives, that I that is there even when you're sleeping, that I that is there despite the constant changes. Who is that I? Well, that starts to give you a touch of who you are. Another way to think about it, it's a little bit more morbid, but it's a good illustration, is if you think you're your body or you identify as the body, ask yourself what part of the body that is. Because if you imagine tragically that you had to get your arm amputated or a leg amputated, you wouldn't cease to exist. If you had to have a liver transplant, or you lost a kidney, or you lost another organ, or you had to have another organ transplant, or you had to have a blood transfusion. There's nothing in the body that by losing it or changing it, you would feel like, oh, now my self is gone. And so the question becomes, well, if it doesn't exist in any of that, it doesn't change, that self is always the same, regardless of what's happening with our body, and regardless, interestingly, of what's happening in our minds. Anybody who's ever drank a lot of alcohol or taken a lot of drugs or been under anesthesia knows that there are all kinds of things we can do that change our experience of our brain fully. Being asleep is also kind of like that, but it's more powerful to think about what it's like if you're on drugs or you're under anesthesia. Well, I is still there, even though you're doing crazy, stupid things, acting in crazy, stupid ways, or in the case of anesthesia, even though you don't have any awareness. I is still there. So the I is what exists all the time. It's like the ocean of the waves. Waves keep coming, different forms, different sizes, different times, but the ocean stays. It comes out of the ocean and it returns to the ocean. It comes out and it returns. But even in that form of the wave, it's still ocean. And so that's the way that we move through this world, is by recognizing and appreciating and loving the form. In the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna was unequivocally clear that we must stand up and do our duties. He didn't say to Arjuna, oh, well, don't worry, you're only soul, to baki to chordo, forget the rest. No. He said, you are a kshatriya. This is your dharma. You are meant to be the ruler of this kingdom. You are meant to restore the dharma. You are meant to fight this war. Well, that's the very unique dharma of a very unique physical incarnation. Even each of the 5 Pandavas had different dharmas, different ways of being. If we were just supposed to live as soul, Lord Krishna would have said, don't worry, your soul, forget it all. Just sit down, I'll teach you to meditate, I'll make you enlightened, forget the rest. He said, stand up, fight this war right now. In fact, I'm going to drive that chariot. I'm going to drive you right into the center of the battle. Not up the mountain, not to a retreat center, not into a cave, not to a spot, just into the battle. I'm going to drive you there. So we have to honor, appreciate, recognize, I would say love these incarnations we have. It doesn't mean that every moment is particularly enjoyable. It doesn't mean that there aren't things that we, if we had magic wands, wouldn't rather change. But it means love this incredible gift that we've been given of this life. Use it for the very best possibility, the very best service. And recognize, even as I move through the world, even as I do my dharma, I am soul. I am spirit. And again, this is what Lord Krishna said. You fight this war. You do your best. But you remember, you are the soul who cannot be cut by the knives, cannot be burned by the fire, cannot be dried by the wind, and so are they. But each of your souls has taken a different incarnation right now, and we're having a drama. We're having a drama, and on the stage of this drama, you are the Pandavas, they are the Kauravas. Here's the roles we're going to play. And you better play it right. Because in playing your role right is actually your only chance to become free. In playing this role correctly, in doing your dharma correctly, is your only chance to be free. not by saying, forget it, I know I'm soul, I'm going to just not be here. I don't think this is what I'm supposed to do. I'm not a killer. I'm not a bad person. This is not my cup of tea. But Lord Krishna said, no, this is exactly your dharma. And so this is how we must live. In our roles, in our bodies, loving it, appreciating it, fulfilling it to the very best that we can, with integrity, with commitment, with duty. And yet we recognize and we remember every moment as we do it. Oh, and by the way, I'm the actor playing the role. This is all a costume. It's all a costume. I'm on a stage. But I'm the actor. And this actor is no separate from the actor in there, the actor in there, the actor in there. We are actually all one. Like the ocean is one, even though the waves may appear to be separate from each other, but actually it's all one. But we've all just mutually agreed on some soul level that we're going to play this drama together. And so we do. And we do it with as much awareness, as much compassion, as much love, as much truth, as much right action as the Buddhists say, as we can. And through that, we experience the truth of who we are. And so that's where, lastly, we become what we call Jiva Mukti. Free while living. It's not that freedom after death, it's that freedom while we're here in the body. We're doing it. We're engaged. But we're also free. Have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your evening. Remember, at 8:30 this evening, turn off all unnecessary lights. Doesn't mean it has to be every light. Some people, for different reasons, have things that are necessary. It's okay. You don't have to be in complete darkness. But just as much as you can, really reevaluate what necessary means. Turn off as much as you can. If you can get by with the candle, get by with the candle. And remember that we're doing that in beautiful symbolism and beautiful remembrance of our oneness with Mother Earth and our oneness with all of creation.
Ooh.